Welcome back to Squawking Dead after a long hiatus.
Woohoo!
You like how I did that out of nowhere?
Yep, that was awesome.
We've got
spontaneous.
Don't talk over. We gotta shake it loose, Carol. We gotta shake it loose.
I know.
Do you know why we have to shake it loose?
Well, why?
You get to ask first, and then I have to. Okay, we have to shake it loose because this is our first YouTube live stream.
Yes.
We're officially on air.
Yep, absolutely.
I can hear you so good right now.
That's awesome. That's very exciting.
I'm pretending like the stream cut out. Okay. All right, so everybody, we have a lot to talk about this week on Squawking Dead. After being away for several weeks, it sounds like it feels like we haven't done this in forever.
It really, truly does.
We've got our notes ready.
Yep.
You are listening to what normally is cut out and edited. You're going to hear all the glorious, what we call in the business, mouse farts, crunchy noises, likes, and all those beautiful things that most of you love so much.
It's called raw. This is like raw.
We're doing it live.
Yep, exactly. No filter.
Yeah. I'm going to actually have Carol kind of run the show because this is how it should have been from the beginning. It should have been Carol's baby. She should have birthed it. But then came Dave with his male body trying to birth the show as a male person. And it didn't work. And he was left bruised and broken.
He's still standing, though, as evidenced by this.
I'm in a wheelchair, but I'm okay. No,
we're not the youngest. You're the youngest chickens.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
I'm too old to give birth.
It's okay.
To a show.
It's all right. Still here.
You won't hold it against me?
No. I am very excited, though, that I get to actually, I took this very seriously, by the way. I literally used my lunch hour, as you know, to put together like a little agenda for this.
Oh,
I need to organize my thoughts.
Oh, definitely. At least our talking points.
Yeah. There's a lot of material. And I feel like it's just ramped up even more in these last couple of weeks just because of the hype machine starting to ramp up again.
Oh, man. If anything that has taught us anything in the last several weeks is that even bad press is good press.
Yeah.
So
pretty much.
Yeah. I mean, and so much of it has come out in all different varieties, too. Like, even the last few days, there have been some really cool things. And, obviously, we will get into it. But...
Well, I figured, why don't we just start with some general news? Just general news before we delve into Comic-Con and theories and the trailer and all of that. There's been, like you said, a lot of things that have been kind of coming out recently and a lot of little, I don't know, I feel like little teasers, not actual teasers, but little things to start getting people kind of ramped up and into, the new season of Fear, obviously that's coming up first, and then Walking Dead, which is actually starting a little earlier than usual because Walking Dead is coming back, I want to say October 7th, and typically it doesn't start that early in October. Usually they try to coincide it with Halloween most of the time, generally I would say. So I was surprised that it was a little earlier this year, but I'm very excited because Maggie has had the baby by this point, which is very exciting. And according to VanityFair.com, it seems that they are kind of following the comic, and the baby's going to be named after Hershel. So that's tearjerker.
That's awesome. I did not know that. Obviously, I didn't know that. I'm not the guy. I'm not the comics reader.
I'm the comic nerd here.
So I think it kind of hit me a little harder because it just came out of nowhere. Baby boy Hershel, bouncing baby boy Hershel.
Bouncing baby boy Hershel. The other thing that was pointed out on comicbook.com, and I mean, I kind of noticed it too just from watching the trailer and all of that. It's like a little nod to season 1, episode 1 with Rick on the horse. And it totally took me back to, the pilot when he's on the horse going into Atlanta on the highway and all of that. So it's kind of cool. And I think that they even mentioned in the article that it is the actual horse.
Well, actually, the horse, he's not using the original horse from season 1. I think it is. Or is it just meant to harken back and kind of nod to it? Is that the idea? No. The original horse is being used, but not by Rick.
Oh, so the original horse is in fact being used. Because I knew I heard something about the original horse, and I was like, really?
That's correct.
It has been.
And not only that, they what they did with that horse. I mean, it's nice to harken back, but they actually covered up the original mark. They basically took the horse, the real life horse that you wouldn't cover up markings on and any imperfections, and they actually covered those over and all that stuff. And I don't know why exactly, but they wanted to make it different than the year one horse, the season one horse.
So what the lifespan of a horse is.
Oh,
Man,
God.
now I got to look that up.
From birth to factory.
Yeah.
So,
the other big news, we were waiting to find out what the outcome was going to be, was the whole Chris Hardwick thing.
Right.
That was big news for a while.
Right.
And I was kind of surprised when it got resolved. I kind of forgot about it in a way when it was like, oh, Yvette Nicole Brown is taking over. And I just kind of accepted that as like, that's what it was. And then I forget, all of a sudden you heard, no, whatever investigation was done didn't turn up any fruit, basically.
Any irregularities.
Any irregularities. And he is coming back, which I'm happy for, because we've talked about this before. It's like, I think Chris Hardwick is uniquely qualified to be in the position that he's in. He strikes a good balance of not overwhelming the show with his personality, because you kind of have to let the people on the panel shine, but
Right.
he does play the role of a good moderator, comic book fan, based on like ratings alone. I mean, he does a good job. So I am really happy to hear that the investigation concluded the way it did.
Same here.
So.
And I think the way you did that before with, not inserting too much of his personality, I feel like you're leading into the idea of what, and this is not to poop on her in any way, but Yvette Nicole Brown kind of did that a little bit too much.
Yeah, I mean, she has her own distinctive personality, which is nothing against it. There's nothing wrong with it. But the thing is that when you're in that role, it's almost like you're a judge, or you have to kind of play this impartial sort of like, I'm a moderator here, and I can't necessarily lean in one particular direction or be like super huge Negan fan or super Michonne, or like you can't necessarily play that card, because you're moderating this discussion and you want to have this dialogue on what's going on. And I think that the problem with her was that she was already a guest on the show, so she kind of was playing that card because she was a guest. She was a guest on the show, so of course she's going to be inserting her own personality, just as every guest has their personality. So it's kind of hard to go from that to being this moderator type role.
Right. She was coming from a position of being more color commentary, being a guest on the show, like you were saying. Yep. The color commentary being, I can insert my comments here and there, and that will just add more flavor to the show. Whereas,
right, exactly.
Well, let me tell you one thing that irked me, but again, it's a criticism. It's not a knock on Yvette Nicole Brown.
Yeah.
And it's completely fair, and I think she would agree to this. She does a lot of the things that we do when you and I are talking one-on-one, which is, okay, like responding back and forth. When she was doing it on the show, I felt like the one thing that Chris does that's very interesting is that he really does not go, yeah, while the other guests are talking. So that's one level.
That's a good point.
That, right?
That's a good point.
And it allows them to kind of say what they need, and then he kind of bounces back. And I don't know, I always kind of wondered how he was able to find the right place when they were talking to kind of insert himself and either cut them off, but like you couldn't tell that he cut them off kind of thing, and then kept
It's not an
with
easy
the show.
skill. It's not something that's just easily done. Like, he's very good in his particular role. He knows how to keep the show on track.
Exactly.
Because you do. Like, you can't just kind of let guests it can't become a free-for-all or whatever. So he's very good at kind of keeping the pace where it needs to be. And I mean, sometimes, he is hyped up and he has energy where it's like, okay, now we're going to, say goodbye to this. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Like he keeps pace as he needs to,
right.
But he definitely does not overpower at all with like, come on guys, like he's not rushing guests whatsoever. And it's a fine skill in terms of knowing, okay, we need to have this interview. We need to have this discussion. We need to move on now to this. We need to, talk about this. And he
is doing it, but we can't really feel it. I don't think the guests feel it.
No. That's why he does it so well, or that's why I say he is doing it well, because it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel uncomfortable or anything of that sort. It just flows. He knows what he needs to do and how to approach things in order to let the discussion flow and then kind of move from that into the next phase of the show, whatever that is. That's a large part of the success of this show.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's only one layer of it though. But the layer that really, I don't want to say got under my skin, but I was kind of like, you know when you do that kind of awkward like yee thing?
Yeah, exactly. Cringe worthy.
Is the way she would, when you're starting to talk and then she goes, yeah. And then kind of like at the end of what the person's trying to say, she tries to finish their sentence. And that really got me. You know what I mean? Like that was like, oh God, just let her finish. Let Angela Kang finish what you, please, please don't do that.
Yeah. What do you think? It's like a overzealous, like a sort of, I don't know how how to describe it.
Well, I do that.
Finisher.
I do that to you all the time. I know that I do that to you all the time.
I maybe, you know what? I guess that's just part of our repertoire because I don't even notice it.
Well, here's the thing. I know that I do it, first of all. But second of all, I know that it's largely a New York thing. I don't know if she's from New York.
That's a good question. And I wonder if it is a New York thing because I noticed that for me, I have a tendency of interrupting people. And but I'm conscious of it. I'm conscious of it and I try to be very mindful of it because sometimes I get like all into what I'm saying and I want to kind of jump in, but I have to sort of like mind my P's and Q's and just remember, okay, my time will come soon. And, you know, just maybe it is a tri-state New York area thing. I don't know. Side note, I was told by one coworker that another coworker, like an older woman in my office who I don't necessarily work with, and she doesn't really know me. I don't really know her, but I guess she's seen me in the kitchen quite a bit when I'm, you know,
you
most
don't
of the
know
time
me. Sorry,
I know that's what it's leading to, but I mean. I guess she's seen me a lot of times when I'm in the kitchen, and that's usually when I'm chatting with people because it's, you know, by the coffee machine or whatever. And I think she commented and asked, like, who is that girl? You know, I always see her lecturing people. I'm like, I don't lecture people. Imagine, I don't lecture people at all. We have conversations. In my mind, they're conversations.
In my mind, in my universe, they're conversations. Oh, so good. So good.
Maybe I need to step outside of myself and really analyze this.
I think we need to talk about this.
Yeah,
you
right?
know?
Yeah. The word lecturing. I was like, I don't lecture people. Really?
No. I'm supposed to say no, right? I don't know what to do right now.
Oh my gosh.
I'm kidding.
But yeah.
You know, you don't do it on the show, so that's one thing. But
no, I don't.
You know.
I don't do it in life at all. But I see what your point is with Yvette Nicole Brown, and that's why I say that not just anybody can jump into that role. You just can't. It's not just anybody off the street can say, yeah, I can host a show. Sure, it's not that simple.
No, I would say not. Actually, she did a lot better than I expected her to.
What, on the panels and all that?
Well, when I didn't see the panels, and I feel bad. And I was going to a couple nights ago while I was doing some research, but I didn't.
Life.
I actually kind of just more or less got sidetracked by clips, and I just started kind of just like wandering off. And then like I meant to watch the panels that she did, and I actually tried to. No, in my own defense, I actually did try to on demand on the web and on the AMC page.
Yeah,
it wouldn't come up for some reason. I don't know why. And I was signed into my cable provider and everything, but
yeah,
anyway.
There are some things that were easier to see. Like a lot of the panels from Comic-Con, and this is kind of leading into Comic-Con in general, which was next on my list of things to discuss. I mean, I saw a lot of it through, actually mostly Instagram. So as things popped up, I was like, oh, okay, let's check out this panel. But I didn't listen to like the full panels. I saw some of the panels where Andrew Lincoln was talking about his departure because he confirmed it on the panel. So it's no longer a secret, no longer speculation, that's for sure. They talked about how there's going to be more of a focus on like the ladies of the show. So there'll be more. I mean, you kind of see that. I mean, Michonne's always, at the forefront. I mean, Maggie will, Carol will. See a lot of Rosita in the trailer too, so she's definitely going to be a presence. One of my favorite things from the panels at Comic-Con actually was that there was the guy from comicbook.com that specifically covers The Walking Dead. He's one specific guy, and I want to say his name is like Brandon Davis. He was all over that, and so he was hosting things all over the place, and he had Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Negan, and Andrew Lincoln, Rick, on a couch. He was kind of interviewing them and, talking about Rick's departure, of course, from the show and blah, blah, blah. But then they did this little spoof, which was really funny. And to me, because I knew the movie. So Andrew Lincoln is a British actor. And many, many, many moons ago, before he was on The Walking Dead, he was in a movie called Love Actually, which I don't know if you've seen.
Yes, of course.
You have. Okay,
I don't remember it again, but it's one of those movies that you can that'll happen. But
it's one of my favorite Christmas movies. It's not even supposed to be a Christmas movie, but it's become one of those movies that's shown every single Christmas because it takes place during Christmas, even though it's not technically a Christmas movie. But in any case, the premise of the movie is numerous different situations and how they all kind of come together, and it's all about like love and romance and whatever, but not all of the situations end with a big beautiful bow wrapped on top. It's kind of like the reality of like, yeah, this is love, but sometimes love is unrequited, sometimes this happens, this is what it goes. So to me, like the most romantic scene in the movie involves Andrew Lincoln kind of professing his love to his best friend's wife, but he doesn't tell her. He stands outside her door with these signs that he kind of drops as he's basically confessing expressing how he feels about her. And so they reenacted that on the couch with Jeffrey Dean Morgan basically professing his love for Andrew Lincoln. And it was kind of funny, professing his love in his upcoming departure or whatever. But the funny thing is that it was word for word from Love Actually, and it works perfectly in the scenario. Wow. Like, it was like literally the same thing. The only difference was that like in the movie, it's like, oh, in Christmas time you tell the truth, and you know, here it was like, well, it's Comic-Con, during Comic-Con you tell the truth. And you know, I think like in the movie he's
ideally,
and in the movie I think he shows him a slide saying, you know, like, and my wasted heart will love you until you look like this, which is like a mummy or something. So
like a walker.
Yes, exactly. It was perfect. I mean, it was like spot on. I was like, this is perfect. You barely had to change anything.
That is pretty cool that they were able to do that. I did hear about that gag,
gag,
and I didn't know if it was word for word. But you know how it is. Like, you skim something, and then if you really don't pay attention, this is what happens. But yeah, I'm actually kind of pleased that it was almost word for word with what happened. But
I've watched that movie too.
That's so sweet, though.
And the other thing that I noticed on the same note as Comic-Con and the Instagram posts that people were putting, there was like a video that I don't remember who it was who posted exactly, and it was like a group of them, the core group, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Andrew Lincoln, Denai Guerrero, Michonne, Lauren Cohan, Maggie, and they were kind of in a group, and all of a sudden, like, one of them sees something and goes and hugs this person, and they all then go and give her like a group hug or whatever, and it was Sasha, the actress that played Sasha.
Aww.
And I forgot that she is on Star Trek, the new Star Trek.
That's
right. It made sense that she was there. I was like, gosh, such a small world.
And they don't skip a beat. They start crying when they see each other.
They did.
It's this thing, man.
Yeah, it was very sweet. It was very, very sweet. So they're a tight little family, these guys.
So what you're trying to say is go watch the panel. And the
go
footage.
watch some of the panels. They're pretty funny and they're pretty cool, and it's always amusing. I didn't see much for Fear. I saw certain things. Actually, I was more entertained by Fear by the things they were doing not on the panel. Jenna Elfman is amazing, can I just say. She's awesome. She's amazing. And her Instagram is so joyous. And so when she was out there, they were like running on the beach and making sandcastles and all this sort of stuff. I was like, look at you all having a great time. You should.
That Fear family, man, seriously.
It's a good vibe. It's a good energy.
I totally admire them. What the thing that I like the most is how into each other they are, really. You see all the comments from all the crew commenting on other things, even when they're gone.
Yeah.
You know, like Kevin Zegers, obviously. I mean, you know, spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't caught up thus far. But yeah, I mean, Kevin Zegers and you know, all the other people that kind of went away. Oh, yeah. And what's his name? Sebastian Sozi, the guy who played Cole.
Yes.
I mean, they're all like in each other's corners, even though they're gone. And it's just so cool.
I think that there is a level of camaraderie among that group. And I feel that part of it stems from the fact that they are kind of like, I don't know, the bad news bears in a way. They're kind of in the shadow of like the juggernaut that is Walking Dead, even though it's great in its own right, you know, definitely like this season for sure. But, you know, they're always going to be the little brother.
The little Walking Dead that could.
Yeah, they're always, you know what I mean? Like they're always going to be, but there's a close-knit nature about them because, you know, they are in their own little category, and because you have such new blood there. And I think also is that they're really, for the most part, embracing this sort of kind of Walking Dead universe and fandom. I think that they're really embracing it. I think that they're really receptive to feedback fans and things like that. Like you can just see, like they're just very interactive.
Well, and the circle is a lot closer, you know. Yes, they are tighter knit. It's a smaller cast, smaller. I mean, I would assume slightly smaller crew than The Walking Dead, but
I would assume, yeah.
But I mean, in terms of fandom, though, even that's a tighter circle, you know.
Definitely.
Fans, you know? And so they can be more intimate with them. They can react to more posts. I mean, especially Jenna Elfman. She's insane. She's insane.
She's amazing like that.
She's so insane that she will go on to actors' Instagrams from The Walking Dead. Like she has nothing to do with them, and yet she's all about them. You know, I don't think she's personal friends with many or any of them, but she's full on into it. She's incredibly receptive to fans and people, and she's just, you know, she's all in. I'm all in. I love her character. I mean, you know, like between her, John Dory, Althea, I'm in. I'm sold. Not for nothing, but you can kill off everybody before, and that would suck, I guess. But I mean, I don't know. People are getting killed left and right. I guess I'll be upset.
But yeah. I mean, it's like I would be upset, but
Rick's
I mean,
not. Oh well.
but not as upset. It's like if something happened to June / Naomi /
slash June
Laura.
slash Naomi slash Laura. Yeah.
Like if something happened to her or something happened to John Dory, I would not be pleased. I would not be pleased.
It's that level. It's that level right now. This is
In
what's
a very
happening.
short amount of time, too.
Yeah, totally.
Which says a lot. And also, Fear is giving us something that we have not really seen, and we've been talking about this for some time. We are going to see a zombie cane for the first time.
So, I was going to say Walker NATO, but yeah.
I thought about it, but I was like, no, it really is a zombie cane.
It is a zombie cane, though.
It is a hurricane, because I think they have like a promo with like a walker, and then the eye of the walker, you have like a storm like churning. Yeah, if Sharknado has taught us anything, is that people want to see what happens when you take something that's already ferocious and intimidating like sharks, or in this case, walkers, and then combine it with the natural elements that already make it a dangerous situation. And what do you get?
It's like Sharknado.
It's like Sharknado. Absolutely.
Completely.
And I mean, Sharknado was a hit, kind of.
That's true. Oh, God. I hope this doesn't catch on. Like, there's a part of me that's kind of like, no, Fear the Walking Dead is ours. It's mine. I hope it doesn't get popular in that way. That's what's going to happen.
Well, I think the other thing that's interesting about Fear, and also Walking Dead, I should say, is just there's a lot of interesting things in terms of the type of characters we'll see, which we'll get to it in terms of all the new characters and new cast members and all of that. But I think, Fear is forging its own path, which I think is cool.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And that's just the beginning. I'm like, okay, the quote-unquote gimmicky side of it aside, every little thing is kind of like an anchor, like the Walker, I was going to say Walker NATO again. What did you call it again?
Zombie cane.
Zombie cane, yeah. Yeah, but you can't call them zombies. Wait, hold on a second.
I know, but it's hard to do Walker cane. It just sounds odd.
Infecticane?
I don't know. Oof.
Her infected? No, that sounds... I apologize for that, because it sounds like I'm calling you infected.
It's just, it doesn't work.
Her
it's
infected.
Hard. I feel like it has to be like, I know we don't call them zombies technically, but
Right. Hey, I'll go with Zombie King, but that's just like the backdrop. There's that, and then there's you got each individual character trying to cope with what happens after, and that's kind of interesting because the whole Carl idea of what happens after in terms of The Walking Dead is more of a positive thing, whereas with these guys it's more of like, okay, my life has been chewed up, spit out, regurgitated, put in the second stomach, digested, put into my mouth, and put in the third stomach, and so what am I now? So you've got Charlie. I mean, just to start, Charlie's has like these nihilistic, dangerous tendencies, and deny. Luciana's going through her own thing where she doesn't really know what the purpose of life is. You kind of see Morgan kind of going off, but also being himself. He's trying to be himself, but he's also trying to find purpose. Dory's holding it together. So there's you see like these things here and there where and Alicia. Yeah. the previews have been very kind to her, but also in terms of the doom and gloom factor.
Yeah, I mean, kind of has a right to be.
I think it looks like she's kind of caught between being the Madison type and helping people and bringing people in, but also kind of putting herself in crazy harm's way.
Kind of borderline suicidal.
Yeah, kind of like a paratrooper that isn't sure that either parachute will work.
Right, and so sort of like, fuck it, whatever. It is what it is.
Why not?
It's interesting. I'm very interested to see what the direction is for the second half of the show, just because we spent this first half. I mean, honestly, I thought that the conflict with the vultures was going to be the theme throughout this season. I mean, apparently it doesn't feel like that's the case, because we kind of got through that by the mid-season finale. So where do you go from here? What trajectory are they going to go down?
The reason why that's actually really interesting, and you did bring this up in the last episode that we had, the vultures, it is kind of like a lot like Terminus, as you mentioned in the last episode. It makes it seem as though the vultures really are the tip of the iceberg. They were something. They were a little bit of a backdrop. They needed some sort of temporary enemy.
Right.
But I think the real thing is about the people. Like, what gets in the way? What do they do from here? How do they grow or descend as people? And of course, just to kind of announce it right in the middle of that, which kind of adds to this conversation, is that they picked up season 5 during this. So what makes this conversation so interesting is that this is going to go somewhere. And whether it ties into what we've said about the two shows merging, or them having like an arc where it kind of reaches a peak where both shows touch ends at the end of it, maybe at the end of, and anything is possible. Because as you know, Fear the Walking Dead ends, and then The Walking Dead starts the week after, it sounds like.
Yeah.
The back 8, and then the first 8 of TWD season 9. So what's really interesting is that this could be something that just just goes succession after succession after succession. So they may thread in Fear the Walking Dead during, let's say, TWD's mid-season break.
Yeah.
And so what could really happen is you get to the end of Fear the Walking Dead, because it's going to go like this. TWD season 9 starts. You start Fear the Walking Dead season 5 during that break, and and then the back 8 of TWD season 9 starts, and then you get the back 8 of Fear the Walking Dead season 5, where they could join up.
Very interesting.
Yeah, isn't it? I don't think they'll do that. Not really. I mean, if I'm being realistic, because they've often spaced these shows really widely apart,
right?
Because they're also using the same showrunners between both shows. So it could be something. I didn't write this on my notes.
Something. I mean, I think that this is one of those things that, like, I feel like there has to be a bigger picture in mind. I don't know what that is. I mean, this is totally something that could be interweaved.
Well, you want to hear some interesting things?
Yeah.
But, I mean, we're on this subject, so I'm going to mention this. But I actually saw this weird cutscene, and I don't know if it's like one of those, because after I saw this cutscene, I saw something like a random clip of Kirkman saying something about planted scenes. So now I don't know. But I saw this clip of Morgan talking to Alicia, and he's addressing the notes that he's finding on bodies and on walls and whatever, saying help, right? And he goes to her, and first of all, he thinks it's her. Like, she's the one writing the notes. So he thinks, you're crazy. Why don't I take you back east with me? Because I'm going back. So there's two things here. One, Morgan is talking about going back to Alexandria or wherever he's going to go, in the process of talking to Alicia, saying, you want to come with me. So isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is very interesting.
So this all kind of ties together, Carol.
It does. I mean, look, if it weren't for some of the new casting, I would, you know how I feel about.
Of course.
But
about the big theory, which is fine. You could just say it. We talked about it.
I've talked about it numerous times about, like, the Whisperer War, and if Fear is going to be, if the Fear characters are going to play a role in that. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's the case from what has been shared in terms of casting news, which we'll get to. Sure. But I'd be very curious to how they merge these shows, because I do feel like that is the bigger picture. I think that's the end goal or the end game. And I'm sure that they would say, it's like, well, we have a master plan of how this is all going to happen. And I mean, they probably do, I guess. And that's very interesting, the idea of, like, Morgan heading back. What is he coming back to?
Exactly. Or whether he's going at all. And that's entirely possible, that he's bringing this up as an idea, and then later on down the road he decides not to do it. That's perfectly fair. But that whole thing that I saw afterwards about Kirkman purposefully filming scenes to misdirect people.
Which is why, and I was just talking to a friend about this today, I almost sort of really am looking at the whole Rick departure situation with a little bit of skepticism, in the sense that this is a huge thing to leak. It just seems...
Or to allude to, let's say. You're talking about the actual idea of Andrew Lincoln leaving the show, or what people have alluded to thereafter, because we were gone for a while, so you got that. We had the news of him leaving,
right?
But we also had the rumor mill, and then we also had what showrunners Angela Kang said, and what a bunch of other people have alluded to as well as Kari Payton on Talking Dead and stuff.
Right. I mean, it just seems like, well, two things. It's like, part of me is like, when you have a main character, the main character that's on the show,
right? The guy who's been there from the beginning.
Who's been there from the beginning? Who is your star of the show? It just seems very odd to me that his departure would leak. They held on hard to the information on Glenn and Abraham. The only reason that the Spoiling Dead got that information is because they're, I assume, to be very aggressive. But it wasn't because it leaked. It was, they're just aggressive in getting their info. And
yeah, of course.
But in this case, I'm like, oh, really? It would leak? And also, I would think that when you have an actor like Andrew Lincoln that's been on the show since the beginning, that this decision doesn't come lightly, and it doesn't happen from one day to the other, or from 1 week to another, or from 1 month to another. I have to think, or I have to wonder, how long have they known about this? How long has this been discussed? How long has this potentially been in the works in terms of how this is being executed? Because I can't imagine that he would just decide from one day to another, like, you know what, guys?
Like randomly, you're saying?
Yeah, like I just feel like this is his career, and this is, this is essentially a job. It's almost like giving notice. Like, you don't just sort of arbitrarily decide, hey, you know what? I don't think I want to do this anymore. So you guys better figure out how to write me out right now. Like, it doesn't, these things are like thought out with time, I think.
Yeah, I would say this much. There's two things here. One, the easiest way to kind of maybe explain the lead up to this is that you have to remember that they stopped filming around the time that the back half of season 8 aired, maybe a month or two after Yeah. Probably because they have the back 8, and you have a couple weekends off for certain holidays and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, basically when they're ready to air the back 8, they've already done filming, and maybe they're doing some post-production, whatever it's going to be. So if he decides to leave around the end of mid-season break, let's say, of season 8, well, then he's got several months to really, from the time he stopped filming, told them about it, and then depending on who, loose lip sync ships and all that stuff. And I feel like it actually might have been Michael Satrazemis that actually leaked it, because he was the first one to kind of openly say out loud, "I'm going to miss you, Andrew," and blah blah blah.
Really?
I mean, I'm sure he thought that it had already been kind of said out loud by so many people because somebody leaked it, and so I think he was the first one to kind of say it out loud, because when news agencies actually reported it and confirmed it, he had actually said it out loud on Instagram. It's like, "We'll miss you, Andrew," and he was an executive producer on The Walking Dead at certain points, the showrunner. But yeah, it's just funny. So there has been enough lag. It's been a couple months, right? So from the time we heard it, probably midway even into Fear the Walking Dead's season 4. So we hadn't heard it until like near the end of that. So he'd known for several months, or he'd been discussing with them for several months, and obviously in those several months, he was talking to EPs, he was talking to writers, he's talking to they're trying to make it so if this does happen, there's got to be an escape contingency. So the second part of what I was going to say was basically my thoughts on that, and due to the nature of which Angela Kang had kind of explicitly said it's not a death, I'm going to go on record, Your Honor, in saying that it's not going to be a death scene. Kari Payton's reaction to the way things go down seems like, there's more show.
Yeah, well, even on the panel, he said, it's like, my relationship with Mr. Grimes is far from over, which makes me feel that...
Which is iffy, of course. Which is verbally is iffy, but yeah. Meaning like, it doesn't mean that relationship could be on the show, but it probably is.
Yeah. I think it would not be wise of them to kill Rick off necessarily, because it really limits any possible opening for him to return. Honestly, I could see a scenario where, and we've seen this happen before on the show, where you have like a massive herd that either over to the farm or over to the prison,
or even Madison's death scene.
And they what?
Even Madison's like quote unquote death scene.
Yeah, and
right, okay.
But they all scatter.
No one's gone. Sorry, I had to do it one more time.
No one's gone until they're gone. There you go. But everybody scatters. Yeah. So what if you have a situation like that where you have some herd, and we do see scenes in the trailer where there is a herd and he scatters, or they all scatter, and where's Rick? I don't know. It could be as simple as that.
I'm going to go on record and say it's neither of those things.
What's your thought?
Here are my thoughts. One, I thought about this a lot, and if they're going to make a significant impact in the series, it's not going to be anywhere near to one of those things where, is he dead? Isn't he dead? No, he's not dead. They're not even going to allude to him being dead, because we're not going to fall for it.
Okay.
Where my mind is going is, I can tell you why obviously the Commonwealth isn't involved in this season particularly, and I can tell you because I saw a windmill.
I did,
during
yes.
the trailer. You saw the...
absolutely. And the windmill says Commonwealth on the windmill.
Yeah, I can tell you exactly the full thing of what it said. Commonwealth Windmill and Dump Service in Saltville, Virginia. I couldn't see the S, so Saltville. So that's interesting. So my thought is that he may either get involved, but I would bank more on the lines of being captured by the Commonwealth.
Very possible.
Something
Very
like
well
that.
Could be possible.
My other thought was, I'm going to stick with this one. Somewhere along the lines, he will get involved with the Commonwealth in some sort of way that will take him out of the show, at least for the first 8 episodes of season 10. Now, what this does is gives Andrew like a year-long break to do whatever, at least a year-long break to do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
And he can, at that point, he may or may not return to the show. And I would bank on him coming back to the show. That would boost the show in a crazy way.
Sure.
Meanwhile, the rest of the actors or characters are doing all these crazy things that by the time he kind of returns, he has to deal with that. And you get a refresh of Rick. You get the John Dory effect. The newness, but the oldness. You get the newness of Rick who doesn't know what's going on, but the old Rick who has been there from the beginning and who can maybe reset his mayhem clock and maybe be the Rick that we know from the beginning, but with the wisdom of a Rick that's been around.
I can see that. It's very well possible that he goes off in that helicopter to go to the Commonwealth. And listen, that helicopter is for the Commonwealth. I'm going to say
for
that
sure
right now.
You know how I know? Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'm like talking.
Is it the A?
I'm Yvette Nicole Brown and you. I'm sorry.
Because there's an A on the side of that helicopter, and like, I don't know.
Is
Kirkman
it an A?
seems to love the letter A, because there was an A on the trailer at Terminus. There's an A on the freaking helicopter. There was an A on the prisoner outfits at the sanctuary.
The dumpsters.
The dumpsters. I don't know what the hell the A represents. It's not an A. It's something else. It's an arrow. An upside down arrow.
I can tell you what it is. Or unless I missed what you saw, and I saw the 3 circles. Do you remember what the 3 circles? Where you saw the 3 circles, the 3 interlocking circles?
The 3 interlocking circles.
Okay. Kind of looks like almost like a radioactive symbol, but not quite.
Yeah.
They kind of overlap each other, right? In kind of a triangle fashion.
Mm-hmm.
On the top of the can of hairs that Jadis opened.
Oh, you know what? You're right, because I did remember reading.
Remember I was talking about that you didn't quite know what I was saying? Okay. Yeah. One and the same.
What does it all mean?
Janice is a double agent, maybe?
Oh, for sure.
Maybe.
I'm still
I wouldn't say for sure, but I know she was in communication with them at the very least, so.
She's definitely in communication with them, so her name's Anne now.
Anne, that's right. She's going to be Jadis. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, Jadis is such a phony name. I'm like, who's named Jadis? I mean, all of them, weird garbage people, had weird names.
I will look for somebody in the world named Jadis, and then I will bring her on the show.
Yeah, Jadis. Ugh.
And then I'll just boot her. Like, I know you exist now. You are relevant. There is only one Jadis.
There can be only one.
Right. Exactly. Like Highlander.
Exactly like the Highlander. Yep. Absolutely.
Poor thing.
I was saying that to somebody the other day, and they laughed. I was like, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You laugh because you know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Highlander, and there can only be one.
I used that reference today in a hashtag. I said there can only be one hashtag, right? I did that to Garrett Dillahunt today.
He, I think, responded.
He did? When did he
either responded or he liked it, because I did see something, and I was like, ah, John Dory.
So I'm on fire, right? I'm on fire? Yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, he was comparing himself to a bust.
Yes. Correct.
And I was like,
correct.
I started singing the theme song, obviously, from the TV show.
Uh-huh.
But obviously that's Queen, right?
He either commented or liked it, so I would check.
I am immortal. I have inside me blood of kings. Anyway, I'm done. I did that far away enough from the mic so that I wouldn't. It wasn't too loud.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. I was very excited about that. Anyway, so yeah, sorry about that.
No. Something else to bring up.
Yes, please do.
Just saying, in terms of general Comic-Con points and panels and things that they were mentioning. So the Daryl Carol relationship.
Okay.
So
I'm here.
So we received confirmation. I say that as if they directly sent me a line. So.
Breaking news.
Breaking news. Somebody just handed me a slip of paper right now.
I have it on good authority.
They just slid it across my desk right now. No, we're going to get greater insight into the nature of that relationship.
Right.
It can't be romantic at this point. I mean, it's been too long. I feel like that's like the carrot that they threw out there. And honestly, I don't want it to be a romantic relationship. I don't think it's as interesting.
No, you and I are in lockstep, because when I'd seen the Talking Dead sneak peek of season 9, it really focused on them. You know, the cigarette thing and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. I think what you and I are both on the same page about is that she is kind of like his anchor, the thing that is kind of tethering him to, like, grounding him in a way, you know, like emotionally.
Yeah.
And that's really not interesting to talk about, because that really kind of sums up what we know currently. But what we also know is that, and just from the SDCC trailer, is that he and Rick are at odds. They're he's questioning Rick in terms of leadership, but so is Maggie.
Yeah.
But Daryl is more of a head-on kind of guy. You know, he's going to be like, are you fit to lead? He's made so many mistakes, that sort of thing.
Right.
So I think Carol's part to play, at least in that respect, would be to kind of remind him that, you're friends with him.
Right.
That kind of thing.
It's like you said, she is his anchor. And to me, that is far more interesting than, all right, they have the hots for each other. I'm like, all right, well, all righty then. Yeah, I mean, exactly.
It's boring, right? We've said this from the beginning.
Yeah, that doesn't make for compelling anything. I mean, as we've seen, how many times have people gotten on The Walking Dead and like an episode later they're killed off? I mean, it's really not, come on. But I feel that the idea of them having this sort of, just very close, tight-knit relationship that nobody can necessarily understand, because like they've gone through so much since day one and have evolved and been by their side every step of the way. It's like, I don't think that anybody can fully understand like the depths of loyalty between the two of them, the depths of understanding. I mean, she's gone through a lot. He's gone through a lot. They've seen a lot of the same things and evolved with everything that's gone on. So I think that it's a lot more interesting to have the relationship be a loving relationship, but not a romantic relationship. Like, don't go there with the romance thing. Like, I really hope that they don't. That's my feeling. I don't know. I honestly, I don't think that they will. I don't think that they're going to go the romantic route, because I feel like just by them sort of like alluding to it, like, oh, maybe.
Yeah, wink, nudge. Right. They haven't even alluded to it. I mean, that's
but they try to, like, I feel like they throw that kind of imagery out there to kind of put it in people's heads.
I think it's in people's heads, so like anything that they do, it's kind of like, you know what it is? We're like the horny teenage boys. And they are the girl at the dance, and all they have to do is be there for them to get for the boys to get boners. I mean, really, they can show them a scene with Carol and Daryl, and the boners are up.
That's it. That's all people need to see.
And you know that's an appropriate reality because you're a woman, and it's like, what did I do? I didn't do anything, and there are the boners. They're staring me in the face. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. But you get what I'm saying. It's like they don't have to do anything because people have been kind of, even if I'm saying it right now and you're saying it right now, that it would be so damn boring for them to be kind of in love. Even that, there's a thing in the back of our minds that are like, oh, maybe.
They're like, maybe. Like, maybe.
But really, it would be boring.
Yeah, it would just, like in from a storyline perspective, I'm like, come on, it's been practically 10 years.
Yeah.
Just, and I can't even imagine it.
There's like a wall of dust and drywall between them. Come on.
And I don't even think that that's the case, because I want to say that during the trailer, there's a scene when Rick is kind of in the dark, so you don't see that well, but like a really wonderful internet detective zoomed in on and kind
did some pixel hunting.
Did some pixel hunting, yeah. And it's during that point in the trailer when Rick and Negan, because it is Negan, down in the cell, and they're having their kind of conversation and stuff. And, while they're talking, they kind of show different scenes, but they show a scene in the dark when Rick is kind of looking at their, I guess, campsite or because you see them, they have tents set up outside.
Oh, yes, I see what you're saying. When he's walking along on the outside of the campfire.
Yeah, and there's some people around the campfire, and if you zoom in, Carol and Ezekiel are cuddled up by the campfire. So
it's a hell to the yeah, and Kari Payton
and Nabila.
That.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, Nabila and Jerry. Yeah, that was confirmed. Yes,
that's some lovely stuff, isn't it?
Lovely stuff. Good for him.
Yeah,
but yeah. So it's like Carol and Ezekiel, fine. I'm like, we don't need to do Carol and Daryl. That doesn't need to happen. That's a different type of relationship. It's not a romantic relationship. It's a very deep, loving relationship, but not romance. It doesn't need to be that. So.
No, and you know what? To further that point, I think we're living in the age of, and I'll tell you why, but we're living in the age where, in many different ways, we admire deep friendships more than we admire love.
Absolutely.
And do you know why that is?
Because...
And why that makes sense in this kind of show, to kind of show a deep friendship? Because we're in this internet age. We're in this internet age where even now we value romantic love over friendship love. Like that, nothing will ever compare it. Like, you're married to your husband, he's your partner. And you know how it is. Like, I was having this conversation with my sister. It was kind of like, she's not with anybody right now, not even a boyfriend, but that's not slight, but I'm just saying that she doesn't get that every time I go out, I have to kind of check in with my wife. Like, well,
it's just,
are you okay with this? Like, it's, you kind of have to run things by her. Just
consideration,
yeah,
you have to.
And she don't get that. And I think that we're in that world right now, whereas in that world, that kind of consideration stuff, it's more of like a sense of safety, of like, oh, I'm going out, tell everybody else, because if I don't come back, send out, it's more out of necessity rather than consideration.
Right.
So like deep friendships, I think, to me, in a world where people can turn on a dime, by the way, and there aren't really loving relationships. So I think what mattered, the currency in terms of the social currency, I think deep friendships are more accessible, first thing, and second of all, it has more value. Love is kind of, I think, in this kind of world, in this post-apocalyptic world, is kind of like, it's rare, and to the point where I can see love burning out because of the survival mode.
And what is love? I mean, that's...
What is love anyway? I mean, I love this show, but do I love my husband?
No, I mean, it's like, what is love? I mean, because, look, the love between Daryl and Carol is probably on a much deeper level than, like, when, I don't know, well, I would argue to say between Rick and Michonne, which might be...
Further proving my point, I think.
Do they love each other? Sure. But do I think that they love each other as much as Daryl and Carol love for each other? I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think so. I think that there's a much deeper just level of just love in general between the two of them, just based on everything that they've gone through. And yes, Rick and Michonne have gone through a lot too, but not as much as Carol and Daryl. Even if you just think about the Sophia situation, I mean, that alone.
Oh, yeah. The way he stepped up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, honestly. So yeah, so it really just kind of furthers my point, though. It's more accessible, and to take the individual example of Carol and Daryl, yeah, there's history, there's a quest, there's a bonding, there's the what was it, Rose? The Cherokee Rose, right? That whole thing. So there's meaning.
When Daryl had lines.
Yeah.
When Daryl had lines.
Well, I think he's going to get a lot more. This is something we were concerned about, is him not getting lines, and now it seems like he's going to be getting a lot of lines.
He's going to be getting a lot of lines. I mean, how do we feel about that? They keep saying that he by no means is replacing Rick, but he's going to have to definitely take on a meatier role in Rick's absence. Whether he's dead or alive, it doesn't matter. He's going to have to step up to the plate a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. In fact, Angela Kang basically made it seem as though, like, Daryl's going to be, let me see here. Yeah, Daryl's going to be kind of he's going to have more of a mature voice. He's more in tune with who he is as a person. He's going to actually be, whereas Daryl was usually very quiet, kind of followed an instinct to its natural conclusion, right? Take, for example, how he took out...
Oh, God, Morales.
Morales, right. I know them by name now. I don't know them by their character anymore.
Good for you. He will always be Morales, and I thought that was, I mean, it wasn't meant to be funny, but I thought it was really funny.
Oh, yeah, for 100%. Like, what are you doing here? Bye.
I was like, bye. I was like, that lasted like not even 10 minutes.
Yeah, he spit a bunch of platitudes at Rick, and then boop, gone.
That's it. Moving on.
But the point of that being is that you had that character, is that Daryl kind of went on instruction. He agreed to something, and he just kind of stuck to it, right? In this season, I think what's going to end up happening is he's going to follow his inner voice rather than in more of an instinctual way. He's going to be thinking things through. He's going to be finding his own voice, making his own decisions based on his own intuitions rather than just pure instincts, in a way where Rick kind of lays out something. He goes, yeah, I'm sticking to that because I agree to that. Like, he's going to be thinking of things, and he's going to be implementing them.
Yeah.
And he's going to be, obviously, in his own Daryl way, not listening to orders. I think he's going to be trusting himself more. So, and that could lead to good and bad results, because as I'm watching the trailer, I see him get into this fight. And this guy, I think it's the same guy that gets into these fights. It's this guy with the gray top and the jeans in the trailer, because you and me examined this trailer front to back. But Henry gets into it with this guy. Daryl gets into it with this guy in two separate scenes, one on the bridge and one in the camp with the pot he hits him with.
Yes.
It's the same guy. I mean, this guy is what kind of ass is this guy that he keeps getting to fights with little kids and a guy he shouldn't be getting into a fight with?
How bizarre, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I do not know.
Getting in everybody's face.
Yeah, right?
What up with that?
I don't know. I am not sure whatsoever, but it'll be interesting to see. And the other point on this coming season, Abraham was spotted on set, Michael Cudlitz. Apparently, he is directing one of the episodes.
That's right.
I'm not sure which episode specifically. I want to say maybe it's episode 7. But
did you read anything about that? Because how did that even come about? Think about that for a second. How does that happen, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I wanted to see Abraham live in action. I wanted to see, and this is kind of going back to Fear, but based on what we've already seen, and we see that Althea had those cassettes, and one of them said Abe and the Doctor.
Yeah.
I want an Althea backstory, and I want to see Abe and Eugene.
Okay, so here's what I think about that.
Okay.
I'm not saying it's out there already.
Okay.
But I think they may be waiting until, I don't know if it's going to happen, but like when Eugene bites it, and then
eventually he must.
And they'll find a way to either record this, or they have recorded this tape, because first of all, it would have to be at a time when the two worlds are touching, Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead, and it'll have to be a time where it feels kind of relevant, like maybe it'll be like a stinger at the end of the episode after the credits or something, or it'll be like a bonus video that they release in memory of Eugene, of Abraham and him. That would be kind of cool, right? Like Eugene just bites it in like a meaningful way, and then it shows the tape from Fear the Walking Dead, Maggie talking to them, right?
Yeah,
asking them questions.
That would be a nice little memoriam for them.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's what I think should happen. I think, but you know what this conversation leads us into? I mean, if there's nothing else on that subject, like Cudlitz directing, right?
Yeah.
Shane Walsh.
I
love that.
People lost their minds, including myself.
You know, I'm going to record that one clip clip of you going, and then I'm going to just keep repeating it like in a mix.
I lost it because, look, Shane was the original badass. He really was. And I mean, he was arguably ahead of his time.
On The Walking Dead, yeah.
Yeah, he was cutthroat before everybody kind of succumbed to the fact that this is this new world and we can't necessarily treat others the way we used to. We have to be a lot more vigilant and vicious. I don't know how else to say it, but he kind of was more on board with that and was sort of like, hey, this is the new world and we're not messing around. This is what we have to do. Whereas Rick at the time was still very much like, hey, come on, like, you know, it doesn't have to be.
Come on, people now.
You know, meanwhile,
smile on your brother. Sorry.
Rick now is savage.
Yeah, savage Rick is savage.
So the question that's been mulling around, obviously, is how is Shane involved in this season? To what capacity? I mean, the easiest thing to say is hallucination or flashback, right? That's the easiest way to go about it. I mean, if you look online, there are some crazy theories out there.
Oh yeah, because it can go in so many directions.
I mean, did you even read about the theory about how like Rick isn't really Rick? Like he died back in season 2, and like this whole thing is just like Shane, because you know Shane is like out of his mind crazy, so he kind of like wants to be like Rick, but that's why Rick does all these savage things because it's really Shane.
Oh, you're bending my mind, and you know what? You know why you're bending my mind? Because you can, if you think about the scenario of how most of the original people from first season are, except for Daryl, gone, right? Andrea, I mean now Carl, obviously Lori, etc. Judith is still around. My original thing was like, you know, between talking to Negan and dealing with the strife between camps and all that stuff, and almost the competition between camps in terms of production and their value and worth and bartering, and then all the other things like the politics of who the saviors are, or you know, some of the saviors rebelling and all that. But then you have the Judith factor, and Judith kind of technically, I think, sounds like it was Shane's daughter, right? So
right, yeah, pretty much.
So that factor alone could be like, you think you're bad enough to be the father of my daughter? You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Rick, no.
I mean,
right? So that could be like a pressure too. And then Judith, and then you also have Gracie too.
Right. I kind of forgot about baby Gracie.
How could you forget about Judith 2.0?
Judith 2.0.
Because Judith 1 is going to die.
Oh,
sorry.
Oh, man.
That's not a conversation I want to wade into, but it's just the idea of these two kids, none of them being Ricks, and being a father in this world, losing his kid, and not really having his own kid. Lori's gone, and Shane could pop up in a vision, or, I mean, I'm thinking it would happen, like he's dreaming that he's sitting in front of Negan in front of the cell, and then Shane's face kind of pops out into the light instead of Negan in his dream or something. And but that's the best I can come up with. But yeah,
it's pretty nuts. I'll be very curious to see how this all goes down.
Yeah, and how involved in the show he's going to be. Is it one episode that he did, or you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's also, again, there's that nostalgia element to it too. I mean, you know, beyond the horse, going into Washington DC, like going into Atlanta, I think about those good old episodes that had the Rick Shane dynamic. I mean, those were some solid episodes with some very, very good writing and storytelling.
Yeah, because you just couldn't figure out Shane either.
No.
You could, in the beginning, you could easily be confused as to, is he a bad guy? But he's not really. He thought his friend was dead. But
that's what I mean. It's like Shane was this very nuanced character. I mean, he wasn't a quote-unquote bad guy. For all intents and purposes, Rick was presumed to be dead, left in a coma in the hospital. He took his wife and his son under his wing as if they were his own. Yeah, I mean, he probably had the hots for his wife for a long time. But, like, I mean, that doesn't happen overnight. And so, like, but, you know, is that evil? Not necessarily. He didn't kill Rick.
In fact, he did him a courtesy in a kind of way. And like, honored him.
Right. And everything that he was doing in the episodes before he was killed was in the vein of Lori and Carl. Obviously, you know, we remember when Carl was shot by Otis when he was hunting. Right. It was Shane who went into town to basically get the medical supplies and left Otis to die or whatever, but all to get back to Carl with these supplies. I mean, he really loved them as if they were his own, to a point that is, you know, obviously you could say like obsessive, that he kind of decided like, look, Rick, I'm a better husband and a better father than you'd ever be, so you got to go. And at that point, obviously, Rick kind of realizes that, and, you know, obviously, you know,
it's like, oh, damn.
Yeah. So yeah, like Shane went crazy, but he also also wasn't coming from an evil place. He was a very complex character, but which is, again, this is what makes an interesting story. He wasn't a one-dimensional caricature of a character. He was very interesting, and that dynamic and relationship between Rick and Shane was also interesting because Rick loved Shane like a brother and kind of thought that, like, wow, thank you, Shane, for looking after my family in the midst of all this, not realizing, like, Shane's like, oh, now you're back and this is supposed to be my life, and now you coming back and reclaiming your wife and kid. It was interesting stuff. So I'm excited for Shane to come back, but I gotta figure it's gonna be a hallucination or a flashback. I can't imagine what else it could potentially be. I've heard some theories.
I'm sure you've heard many.
Because you see in the trailer Daryl and Rick on Daryl's bike on a road going somewhere, and then they're kind of at a certain point where they're like off the bike, and then Daryl throws it on the floor and they're kind of like glaring at each other, whatever. So there's like this sort of, I don't know, you get the impression that there's this sort of standoff between the two men.
Right.
And some people say that it might be reminiscent of the Shane-Rick altercation. You have these two prominent characters kind of glaring off, and only one can really, you can't have two alpha dogs, basically.
Right.
Somebody's gotta go. So, I mean, it'd be interesting. It would be interesting. I don't know. I'm just excited that Shane's gonna be back. I'm like, woohoo, Shane's back.
Yeah, I mean, just have Johnny Bernthal on the set.
Oh,
that's
so
gotta be so
awesome.
Weird for everybody.
I'm sure it must be, especially for some of the people who've known him from like way back, which would basically be Daryl.
Oh, yeah.
Rick. I guess, Maggie, because when they were on the farm, Shane was there. So,
That fleeting parting shot, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can't imagine. I mean, they essentially worked together like almost 10 years ago and back again.
Oh, God, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what, 8-9 years, something like that?
Back in the day.
So that's going to be pretty cool. It's going to be really cool to see that, and I'm excited for when he turns up.
Yeah. Well, what else you got on your agenda?
Well, let's just get into the trailer. It was a meaty trailer. It was like, I think, 6 minutes. I think it was over 5 minutes. So it was, that's a long time. There's a lot of information in that amount of time. I will say that for me, the most exciting things that I saw were post-credits, not so much before the credits.
Oh, yeah, of course. Do you want to get to that now, or do you want to be like,
sure.
Okay.
We've kind of touched upon a lot of the things that were in the trailer. I mean, we haven't gotten into everything, but basically, like, you have the post-credits that kind of are like, oh, Walking Dead, and you think it's over, but it's not, and then you see these new characters that are introduced. They're kind of like standing in front of, not a tribunal, but almost kind of like on a stand. Not a stand, but they're kind of in front of who we see eventually is Gabriel, kind of presenting their case of who they were.
Oh, yes, the new characters. I thought you were referring to something else, but yes, I do know what you're going to say, because I wrote a couple things about it.
Quite a few new characters, and those characters are from the comic, which they did a very good job of castings, because when I saw some of them, I immediately realized, oh, this person must be this person must be that, and it already gave me an idea of where we are in terms of time. Enough time has passed that we are now at this point in the future, and these newcomers have stumbled upon their community and have been brought in to sort of be evaluated, essentially, like, are you a threat, are you not, that sort of thing.
By the one-eyed Father Gabriel.
By the one-eyed Father Gabriel, yes. I think it's very interesting that they made one of the characters deaf, because I think the idea of being disabled in this kind of environment and conditions is very interesting. And I think I read an article that was basically saying that it's cool to see how this character is almost superhero-like in a sense that her other senses have become far more acute in light of not being able to hear. You have to be acutely aware of your surroundings in this kind of environment, and she cannot hear. But obviously she has her sense of sight, her sense of smell, her sense of, all her other senses, and how those have become elevated and help her navigate this world, even though she may not be able to hear or communicate, for that matter.
And let me just say, poor her, because of her sense of smell.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody must smell like dog duty.
Oh, yeah.
Mixed with air duty, mixed with crotch sweat.
Cannot be good. Cannot be good.
Although it could be one of those things where it's like sensory overload, and she's like Superman, where like she hears all these voices, but she has to tune into one.
Speaking of hearing voices.
So it's the smells. She has to choose a smell.
Speaking of hearing voices.
Okay. Well, you can go there. Go there. Okay.
The very last scene that we see in the trailer after the coming October 6th is we see Rosita and who I believe to be
Eugene. It was Eugene. Yeah.
Basically running, sliding down this muddy hill,
scared out of their minds.
Scared out of their minds, covering themselves in mud and hiding. And you see a herd walking past them. Now, I saw that scene and I immediately knew, because it looked just like the scene in the comics, that those are not a herd of walkers. Or there is a herd of walkers, but intermixed in that herd are the Whispers. Right. Because that's what they do.
Now, you can't make them out, I guess, visually, right? Because it wasn't very obvious.
No, if you know the story, you kind of infer like, oh, that's them. They're in that herd or whatever. And the scene looks very similar to the scene in the comics, except it's not Rosita and Eugene. It's two other male characters, but it's a very similar scene. Now, what I didn't realize until recently, because I was listening to a YouTube channel, I don't know if it was PT channel or New Rock Stars, but they do a lot of breakdowns of like episodes and trailers and all of that. And they said, and I kind of went back to the trailer and I replayed it at the loudest volume, but they said that if you go to the last, I think 15 seconds of that scene, you can hear them whispering like, where are they? And I was like, are you seriously? And then I did listen to it. I was like, oh
so
my
you
God.
missed it just like I missed it, right?
I missed it at the initial watch. I did not catch that, so I had to rewatch it.
You know, that makes me feel so much better, by the way.
No, absolutely. Like, I didn't catch it at first hearing at all. So it's like I had to re-listen to it and put it up high and really I was like, oh my God. Yeah. So I was like, yeah, it's the Whispers for sure. And they did cast Alpha. She has been casted. So it is.
Just in the last week, I think we heard about this.
Yeah. It's Samantha Morton, who I think she was nominated for an Oscar. Was she in Fantastic Beasts? I know that one of the characters was, one of the new characters.
No, she wasn't, but, and this is the guy I wanted to talk about.
Daniel
Foglar.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dan Foglar. He's in the Goldbergs, he's in Fantastic Beasts. He's kind of a comic relief guy in my mind. I was doing research for something relating to the new characters and I couldn't remember why. I think I wanted to just friend them on Instagram. But when I was doing the research for Dan Foglar, or for who was going to play the teacher, because I was like, oh, what's his name? And then I realized, I stumbled upon his actual character in the comic book and his role. And the fact that they cast Dan Foglar is just such a really good choice, because if they are going to go that route, they're going to make his character more of more of like a lighthearted comic relief kind of character, which the show desperately needs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely.
Like, he's fantastic on the Goldbergs. He's just out of his mind.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so I don't think he's going to be like that on the show, because they tend to cast comics on The Walking Dead, and they end up being really serious actors. But this, I think, will be one of those lighthearted. Instead of being clueless, he'll be more of like a kind of like kind of a lighthearted kind of person, light on his feet.
I think that the show needs those moments of levity. I've said it before. I mean, we used to get those moments when Abraham was around. He used to have his one-liners that would just crack you up, and you miss that presence. You miss that sort of like comic relief, essentially. And Negan has his moments of funny one-liners and all of that, but it's not necessarily the same.
No, it's more heavy. It's more heavy. It is comic, but some stuff's gonna go down.
Right.
But with Foglar, it's gonna be like, it could be heavy, but it's kind of also kind of funny.
Right. So I was more transfixed more than anything with those last couple of images. I was like, oh man, and when they announced that they did cast for Alpha, first of all, she looks just like her. I think it's a good job. I mean, when I looked her up from a presence perspective and facial expression wise, it works. I could totally see it.
I trust you.
So
I kind of wish they didn't, though. Like, I wish they didn't
make it a surprise to release it. Yeah, I know, right? But I think it's one of those things that everybody kept asking. I mean, including me. When they casted the woman who's deaf, who's Connie, when they casted for the woman from Into the Badlands, who plays a character, I think it's Yumiko. They're all part of the same group. So I was like, okay, alrighty then. So where's Alpha? Because this timeline wise, this should be right on par when they show up.
Right.
So there were all these speculations, including my speculations of like, is it Madison? Is it Jadis? Right. Is it somebody we already know? And it turns out they are Alpha, or whatever.
Right.
We know the Whispers are coming, and she's the head of them. So it's sort of like, all right.
And they're playing it safe. It's kind of like, we did lay out a couple scenarios, and then, what I said at the end was like, if they really, really want to play it safe, they would just hire, they would cast a new person, right? Like, let's say somebody nobody knows.
Yeah.
But that could present some interesting things in and of itself, because, well, I mean, first of all, then now you really don't know where Maggie or Daryl or Jesus is going to go. You really don't.
No, and like I told you, the presence of the Whispers is a game changer, and Alpha makes her point very well known. It's like I told you, it's the Red Wedding of The Walking Dead. What ends up happening leads to many, many characters being killed off in one fell swoop. And so
it's like the dead wedding.
Yeah, the dead wedding. And it's shocking and it's sad and horrible. So now the question becomes, it's like, well, how many of these characters are not making it farther than this season, are getting killed off? And I would say that they're really going to end up trimming the fat. They're really going to kill off like a good chunk of the characters. I think Rosita's gone.
Yeah,
Carrie might be gone.
I have a bad feeling about Carol, but
oh god, I mean,
right?
They have to have a few characters that are going to be pretty heart wrenching to kind of,
because I mean, if they're going to build up Carol's friendship with Daryl and really start to focus on that more, because they haven't at all.
Right.
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to be doing it, ramping up for this purpose.
Right.
And they also have that 1.5 year break to kind of pretend like certain friendships have been going on for a while.
Right.
You know, Nabila and maybe even Ezekiel, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
Anything is possible on that front. So that would be a good reason to kind of
I will say that there are
friendships.
There are a lot of characters that are around right now that are killed off when Alpha makes her grand statement.
Entrance.
Not even entrance.
Oh, a statement.
She wants to make a statement and make it very clear, and she does so in a certain manner. Yeah.
Okay. No, it's fine. It better not to, because
But it is. But
you
it
could
is.
say what it is, but Angela King made it very clear that what's going to happen on the show is going to surprise many people, comics watchers alike, because there is going to be a divergence no matter what.
There is going to be a divergence for sure, because I mean, in reality, we could say it right now.
From now, yeah.
From the point now, the whole Whisper story arc was heavily reliant on Carl,
right?
Which was why a lot of people were like, "How in the world is this even going to happen without Carl?" Because the whole point of contention between Alpha and the Whisperers and Rick and his group was this sort of incandescent Romeo and Juliet relationship between Alpha's daughter Lydia and Rick's son Carl,
right?
Who forge a relationship in light of Lydia running away from her mother and the Whisperers because her mother allows her to be systematically raped by the men of the group in order to toughen her up. I mean, it's pretty savage, rough stuff, which I don't know if the show, well, I don't think the show will go there. I hope not. I don't think so, especially in light that relationship, I guess, is not going to happen, I would imagine.
Who knows? There is that new character that's kind of like, I don't know if he's a title character, but he's a young man. I forget what his name was. He's I think he's Hispanic.
Oh, yeah, I know.
He could be the replacement for Lydia, because I don't see a Lydia kind of character walking around as like a new cast member.
No.
So what if they flipped the script and made it a boy, and he's like raped by the women to toughen him up?
I don't know. But I will say that was a heavy crutch of that whole storyline.
Right. Carl being there.
Carl being there. And so what leads to her making her grand statement is that Carl, even when Lydia ends up going back to her mother, because it is her mother, Carl still tries to go after her. And basically Alpha had made a sort of truce with Rick to kind of be like, you stay in your area, we stay in our area, and we won't bother each other. As long as you stay in your area and you respect our area, that's it. And Carl, in keeping with his persistence to go after Lydia, kind of oversteps his bounds, obviously, and pushes Alpha to feel that she needs to go to Alexandria and all of that, and really kind of make it clear that you can't be trespassing on her property. And
that's the fell swoop.
That is the fell swoop. And she sets a very clear border showing like anything past this line is our area, don't go in. It is lined with people.
With bodies,
right. So
or body parts of the recent people that were
correct,
dead. Right.
Correct.
That's what it sounds like.
Right.
You know what's really interesting about that, by the way, is the knowledge that everything that before this new season was actually one whole chapter. Even the Negan thing. It was one whole, I guess, is it a chapter or volume, I guess?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah. Volume.
So this part on, after all the things like the governor, the terminus, all this stuff, that was one whole chapter. And this is a whole other new chapter.
Yes.
The line is going to be littered with previous cast members from this whole beginning chapter that we lose in the single act.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting.
It's very interesting, and I wonder at one point during this season are they going to do this? Are they going to spend most of the first half of the season focusing on this like internal conflict of these groups trying now to forge a new to United States of America. I don't know. And then personally, I think the Whisperers are going to come in the back half of the season.
You think they're going to come in the back half?
In light of what's going to happen to Rick and Maggie in terms of them exiting, I think that the first half of the season will lead into their departure, however that departure may be. Honestly, I think it'll happen at the end of season 9. I don't even think we're going to get to like the meat and potatoes of it.
Of the Whisperers.
Yeah. Maybe we'll start to get into it, but I don't know. I don't know how much time we're going to spend on these internal conflicts, which they seem to focus a lot on in the trailer.
Right.
Which is a bit of a shame because I'm like, meh.
We're not a lot on, but you're in terms of the Whisperers, you're saying?
No, in terms of just like the internal conflicts between Saviors and Maggie versus Rick and Daryl, and I'm kind of like, you know what? I don't really care as much. I'm interested in the helicopter. I'm interested in the Commonwealth and the helicopter. I'm interested in Jadis and like her connection to said helicopter.
Right.
I'm interested in Negan because he will escape out of that cell. It will happen. So that is for sure.
Escape?
He will escape. He will be assisted.
Okay.
There's somebody who assists him in the comic. I don't know who that's going to be on the show.
That could change too, though.
Oh yeah, that could change.
He could be let out by Rick. I mean, for all.
No, yeah, for sure. Somebody else could totally be the one to like, but he's not going to like break out of the cell. Like somebody is going to assist him.
And you mentioned also that he and Alpha had a sort of thing going as well.
Correct.
So,
Yes.
That's interesting to me too, because based on what's happened on the show, what I know from what you've told us, I'm wondering how that comes about. But you also mentioned, I think, that he sort of turns into a sort of good guy.
He does because, and I mean, we've seen this on the show. He has a very warped sense of standards, but the idea is not...
It was always order and safety.
It was always about order and safety at all costs.
Right.
At all costs. And with the idea that people don't know what's best for them. He knows what's best for them, and people need to be told what to do because they don't know what's best for them.
Yeah, like 1984.
There you go. Another joyous story.
There you go.
But, so basically, we're full of joyous stories.
Yeah, joy.
Joy.
Trust in the state. The state of the saviors.
Yeah. What was the other thing? Like, don't listen to what your ears and eyes. Don't believe with your eyes.
Don't believe your senses. Yeah. We know it's best for you, etc., etc.
Yeah. I think that was said on CNN recently.
Hashtag Negan. Hashtag the saviors. Hashtag save us.
Hashtag America.
Hashtag Merca.
Hashtag America.
Hashtag Merca. Anyway, go on.
But I'm not even going to get into it because it's a few things that make my blood pressure rise.
I mean, there's enough politics in real life, and there's going to be enough politics in season 9 for you to be like, no mas
right now
on the politico.
No, but I mean, basically, Negan is kind of not in the same vein as Shane, but one of these people that is not evil for the sake of being evil. It's with a greater good in mind that you understand. It's just the way they go about it is where you're like, oh well, that may not have been the best way to do it, but the intention of what they're trying to achieve is there. And I'm trying to remember in the comic how it all works out, that he wants to be a part of this new world. He does. Because that's the whole point. That's what he wanted. The whole idea of this future is that Rick and Negan and Ezekiel, like all these people want this new world, but you kind of have to understand that you can't function in a silo in order to kind of forge this new world. You have to kind of work as various communities working together in order to really sort of rebuild. And Negan wants to be a part of that. It's just that obviously he's being punished for his war crimes, essentially, and held in this cell.
Because somebody has to be held responsible.
But he wants to be a part of this new world. He doesn't want to come out and cause havoc. He wants to partake in this. Like, I need to, I want to be a part of this. Like, when are you going to let me out? I think the difference...
He doesn't say it out loud, obviously.
He doesn't say it out loud, although he does kind of say in the trailer, like, when are you going to let me out and let me see this,
right.
in the world and all that. The difference being that I think Negan is much more of a cynical realist than Rick, where Rick is still like, we're rebuilding, we have to work together. Whereas Negan is sort of like, how long do you think this happy charade is going to go on before?
Yeah, like, I'll believe it when I see it, really.
Yeah.
And even if I see it, I probably won't believe it.
And he's going to be like, things are going to hit the fan eventually, because Negan's more of a realist that understands the ways of people people and that kind of power struggle that happens. So he's sort of the mindset of like, oh, everything sounds hunky-dory. Okay, well, you tell me how long that lasts before everything goes to hell. And I think Rick doesn't appreciate that and doesn't want to hear that, but that is what happens. That is a reality. Everything isn't all pie in the sky. Like these conflicts do happen, and we see that they do start to happen. But I think Negan ultimately wants to be a part of a rebuilding of society. So when he is back in the wild or whatever, essentially, he wants to basically show Rick, look, you can let me out. Let me be part of the community. I'm not a threat to you. Let me work with you. That's what we're supposed to do, right?
Right.
In the comic, he is the one who ultimately defeats Alpha, Negan.
Right.
But he does it also to kind of like prove a point to Rick to say, look, I took her out. You can trust me. Right. I'm on your side. Because I think initially Negan's out in the wild fending for himself, and he does come across the Whisperers and Alpha, and he wants to join them. But he sees firsthand the things that they do in terms of the rapes and that kind of stuff. And remember, Negan's number one rule, no rape. There's no violence against women in his like sanctuary. And that always was the case. It was always something that, remember the guy who tried to rape Sasha in the cell, he took him out real quick. And, he made it very clear to her and said, we are not monsters. Because like I said, he felt that there was a method to what he was doing. And, we are not savages. We are not monsters here. Right. And the Whisperers are savages. And I think that he definitely sees that in the comic, and it's like, no, this is barbaric. And the fact that, and when he sees that Alpha allows this to happen as a way of toughening their members up, he's completely disgusted. And I think it takes him over the edge to realize, you know what, I'm going to have to take this one out.
Yeah, and it really does kind of come back in terms of like how tangible we can actually see, even from now, that his philosophy kind of got away from him. Obviously, we have tons of examples that we brought up, like the top heaviness of it, but it really didn't click with me that he wanted maybe a better way until that walkie conversation with Michonne.
Right.
But also a precursor to that was his conversation with Carl. Like, when did this get away from you?
Right.
You didn't want to get to this point. When did it start to get away from you? Michonne kind of mentioned that as well. When did this sort of get away from you?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure this is not how you intended things to turn out. I'm sure what you thought you had to do evolved from the point at which it was originally. You had to make up new structural rules along the way. You had to kind of set up these boundaries, and that boundary moved further, and that boundary moved further, until you're at a point where you're actually killing people just to kill them. You're killing a lot of people to show an example, when you used to kill one, right? Yeah. Genocide, it wasn't a thing that you thought of originally until Simon made it sound palatable, and now you have to do it. You don't have to do it. You move the boundary again.
Yeah.
The limits of how far you're going to go, you've moved that boundary again. And so I think when that was said, that the expression on his face when that was said by both Michonne and Carl told me everything. Yeah. It's kind of like, I wanted to pull it back. I always thought one day that I'd be able to walk it back, but every single time he had to keep making more and more compromises. You know? So, and this would be not only like the straw that broke the camel's back, but it's like a 1,000-pound steel weight.
Yeah. No,
and
absolutely.
then with Rick grooming him, talking up this new world for how many, like a year and a half at least in the cell,
right? In the cell,
being the Carl in the scenario. There is a part of him that wants to be a part of the new world, even though he's not showing that, and always telling Rick, it's not going to be the way you think it's going to turn out, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But then also, like, I'm sure he had a lot of time to think about what got him to this point, what he did wrong, all the ways in which that burden of responsibility is now off his shoulders. I'm sure there was a defined period for a long period of time, but after a while, you're kind of like, I see things for the way they are. Now I just want to help you, Rick. Duh.
Yeah. It's like, I'm just trying to help you, dude. So that in of itself is exciting to me. I can't wait to see how this all goes down with the Whispers. I can't wait to see how that storyline starts getting introduced, and I am very much looking forward to that. And the freaking helicopter who's going to take away Rick and Maggie.
And by the way, I don't know who said this or who I heard it from, but there is talk about Heath maybe showing up either this season or next season.
He's showing up.
Yeah.
You know how many times I've said that. In fact, I think every other episode I'm going to be like, where's Heath? And there's going to be one episode where I don't say anything and he's going to show up. I'm going to be like, see, there he is, alive. I've been saying this for years.
It's one of those things where you have to forget, because you have to, if you keep saying it, then he won't show up. But if you intentionally not say it, he won't show up also. So there's the thing where it's going to have to be one of those nights where you sleep in your kid's bed because you had to get him to sleep early enough, and then that one night where you forget to tweet it out, that's when he shows up.
That's when he shows up. Yeah. I will lose my mind when Heath shows up.
Speaking of things that are going to be happening really quickly and violently, like Heath coming back. There is a scene in the trailer where Gregory has a knife and is going for Maggie. You miss it. It's very short, and it explains a lot of Xander Berkeley's Instagram right now.
Yeah.
His ability to, he's him traveling and all that stuff right now.
Yeah.
I feel like his end is going to be swift.
Can I tell you, it's one of those things that I've been sort of kind of like waiting to happen, because should I give you spoilers from the comic?
I mean, you might as well.
Okay. So he's still a shit weasel in the comic, and, he's still like, he's still trying to get people to conspire against
Spinning
Mac.
his webs.
Right. But in the comic, he and some other members of the community conspire to poison Maggie. I think it's that she doesn't have much of it, so she only gets kind of like dizzy or kind of like lightheaded or whatever, but she's not killed by it or whatever. Obviously, in this case, it's like more of a knife, a violent sort of altercation or whatever. But once it's sort of realized Gregory was the brains behind all this, that he tries to play his whole, oh, it wasn't me, Maggie. I don't know, like the same
Margaret.
way. Yeah, exactly. The same way he does on the show, whatever. But Maggie is having none of that. And she wants to make it very clear that that is completely unacceptable and whatever.
Yep.
And to, Rick's shock and surprise, horror, he is publicly executed by Maggie.
Wow.
He's hung from a tree for everyone to see.
Damn. I could tell that there's going to be a death.
Yeah, because he's not present in
she
anything.
kills
His Instagram, he's not at all in anything whatsoever.
First episode, do you think? Second, maybe?
Early on, for sure.
Yeah, no later than the second episode.
Yeah, it's going to happen pretty early.
I'm going to miss you, Xander Berkeley.
Aww.
I miss you so much.
I know.
Now you can make movies with Stephen Ogg.
Oh, there's nobody I miss more than Stephen Ogg.
Yeah, his Instagram will keep us alive.
His Instagram is amazing.
Yeah, and again, Jenna Elfman commenting on his stuff, it's like so weird. It's like
same thing
how it bleeds.
Yeah. Awesome. But yeah, I don't think he's long for this world.
No.
I have serious concerns for Rosita. I have serious concerns for Ezekiel. I have serious concerns for Jerry. I have serious concerns.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. I have serious concerns for a lot of these characters. I'm like, I don't think they're making it out of this season. I think we're going to whittle it down to our core group.
You know what's really interesting is that I kind of half expect most of the people you've said just now to go away. The one person I don't want to have to go away is Sadiq for some reason.
I don't think he will. I think he'll still be around.
I don't think we're done with him yet.
I don't think. No, me neither. I don't think we're done with Sadiq yet.
Well, especially if you're a doctor also.
Right, yeah. But I think Eugene is still going to stick around.
I think so too, by the way.
I don't think Eugene's done yet, especially because of the ham radio we saw last season. I think Eugene is going to be instrumental in getting the ham radio up and running and making contact.
Maybe with the Commonwealth.
Yep. I think that Eugene is integral to that. That ham radio is not some arbitrarily thrown in there. Like, oh, we went into this house and it just so happened to have a ham radio. Like, You remember, I was like practically waving like a flag, throwing fireworks into the sky, smoke signals. I was like, ham radio, hello.
There's a ham radio right there. You didn't need to have all those three added.
I was like, there's a ham radio on the table right over there.
yeah. Forget the smoke signals. That's fire. Fire's bad.
Forget all of that. Forget the antibiotics. There's a ham radio right there. Start working on that.
Breaker. This is the professor. Over.
Yes. Eugene is going to be instrumental in that.
The doctor.
Dr. Eugene already. Porter. So,
what would his call sign be? Mullet? Dr. Mullet?
I don't think we're done with Eugene yet.
No.
Not yet.
And that'd be interesting. That's actually really interesting how you can carry that character forward. And on that same note, it's like I almost hope that Dan Foglar's character sticks around, like in a weird way.
I think he will. I don't think that they're going to just kind of like arbitrarily bring him on and kill him off. I think he has to. I think so.
You know already that the season's going to be very heavy, but
yes.
Not to bounce back to Fear the Walking Dead, but there are moments in the trailer even where you see some funny moments. Or like, kind of like, I got this, and like something crazy happens, and
right.
But like in a funny way. And then, so I feel like the shows have really got to key in on just some lighthearted moments that happen here and there. You know what I mean? I think The Walking Dead had those sporadically in moments. It's kind of like some of the criticism that you at many points during Breaking Bad you would make. I mean, especially in the beginning, there's a lot of lighthearted, kind of light-footed moments, and then later on it got really, really, really heavy, and then they brought back some of those things in the last season, and I think that they need more of that. With Mo Collins coming into Fear The Walking Dead, some of the characters that, Dan Foglar and everything.
Yeah.
So I think there's moments for that.
I think there will be. How are you going to get through an apocalypse? You got to have a sense of humor about things.
You gotta have a funny bone.
Yeah. How else are you going to get through it?
You just do. You just get through it.
You just get through it.
But like John Dory says, you gotta fight every day. Every day.
Oh, John Dory. So charming.
So gallant. So
gallant.
Steadfast.
He was what Rick used to be before he got all savage.
I think it was maybe even more.
Yeah?
He had like an idealized image of himself and just stuck to it. I think Rick was more grounded and be like, oh, this is a little messed up. John Dory's not phased.
No, he's not.
I don't think. In a weird way, like he's kind of phased, but kind of moves forward. Whereas Rick is kind of like, oh, this is messed up. Let's get out of here.
Oh, God. Yeah. I'm in it, man. I'm excited.
Okay, the crops at the sanctuary. You see the crows there, right?
Yes, correct.
I thought there was some significance to that because a bunch of crows is called a murder.
Yeah. Oh.
I wrote this in my notes. Yeah, like a gathering of crows is a murder. That's what they call them. Like a murder of crows.
On a side note, I feel so bad. Like, I mean, crows are beautiful birds, and like they get
intelligent too.
Very intelligent. They're and the sheen on their feathers is beautiful. Like, I wish my hair would have the sheen on a crow's feathers, but they just get such a bad rap. It's so sad.
Yeah, they're known for doom and gloom and death.
I know.
And maybe it's because they're kind of intelligent because they have a personality, and if you have a personality, there's a tendency for gloom. So
yeah,
maybe crows are depressed.
I
they're like, come on, guys.
I don't even think that they're like intimidating, scary birds. Like, I mean, you want to look at a scary bird. Look at an ostrich. It's super scary.
Oh my God, those should be death birds.
Oh my God,
an ostrich shows up on your door. You know you're gonna die.
Oh my God! Like, I went to Australia years ago and got chased by an ostrich at one of those like sanctuaries. Oh my God, the thing is insane. It's like as big as you are. They got crazy.
No, it's 2 times bigger than me.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's not.
Most people are 2 times bigger than me. So
stop. I am not very tall, so I deal with it as best as I can.
Yeah.
Most people think that I'm taller than I actually am. Actually.
Same here. When I tell them I'm 5'2", they're like, "What?
Really?"
Exactly. So,
see, I'm 5'3.5".
Oh, there you go. You got it too. I'm like, no, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, no, it's because of my larger than life personality. I say that people.
I always say it's my presence.
Yes, exactly. Same
I
idea.
use that word specifically.
Same idea. I have a large presence about me that distracts from the fact that I am not that big in stature, but that's okay.
That's okay. We make up for it with personality, right?
Exactly.
We got big personalities. We got big heart. So that's why, yeah, exactly.
Precisely.
So I also saw Judith picking tomatoes in the garden. If that is Judith, so that's a thing.
I know. See, here's the thing that throws me off. I'm like, is it Judith or is it Gracie? Like, I don't know. And then it's like, we can't just arbitrarily forget about Gracie. You can't throw out a baby from last season and just kind of say like, oh yeah, Gracie, yeah, she's still around. I'm like, no. We're not going to gloss over this. There was a baby that was taken. And yes, we're all unified now, but where's this baby? I need to understand where this baby is.
Yeah, or who the baby is or whatever. But the tomatoes in the garden, that's like the dream with Negan, right? Remember?
Right.
The flash forward dream. Yeah.
Right. Is that Gracie in the garden? Is that Judith? I'm going to assume that it's Judith.
I think it's a safe bet.
It's a safe bet that it's Judith.
It was only
but then where's Gracie?
Gracie's not going to be like she's got to be at least a toddler.
Yeah.
Even if it's 5 years, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know how much time has passed. I think in the comic you're talking about a jump of at least...
It's like 5 years, right?
Yeah, but it looks like in the scene that they show it can't have been that long because Maggie's baby is still a baby. Not all that much time has passed.
Which kind of screws with the whole idea of your timeline for the Whisperers.
But
because if there's 2 time jumps, it's...
I think there's 2. I think there has to be 2, it seems. I think, and that's why I think the Whisperers will come at the back end. I think we're going to do like a smaller time jump at the beginning to kind of show like we're rebuilding, but we're not all the way there yet. We're still trying to iron out some conflicts and whatever, but we are rebuilding. We've made enough of a jump that we're in the stages of rebuilding, but we still got some kinks to iron out. And then I think after those kinks are ironed out, we'll take like a bigger jump because really in the comic book, we don't really have that sort of conflict that they keep showing about like this this group and the fighting in this group within this group. That doesn't really happen in the comic. We kind of go straight from Rick defeating Negan in the confrontation that they have, and we do a time jump to the point that like we are rebuilt. The communities are completely aligned. All communities, we're trading among each other. We have like roads that have been sort of like established and guarded. Like definitely there's been a rebuilding for sure of like civilization to a point that is rebuilding in an old West kind of style way, because, you know, we're not really using cars. We're not really using gas and things like that. You know, it's a different kind of
infrastructure
type of environment.
Right. Or like out, like I was going to say outback, but more like an old West kind of.
Like an old West sort of.
Frontier kind of.
Frontier land. There you go. Frontier. So that's why I feel like we're going to end up doing 2 time jumps. We're going to do one in the more immediate future and then one bigger time jump where we're going a little further into the future.
Right.
And that's when we finally cross paths with Alpha and the Whispers.
Right.
And I think that might be how they handle it.
And 2 things about that is, one, I don't think, my feeling is what they're going to be doing is instead of ironing out the things, I think they're going to increase. I think that because it feels like that at first the Saviors are thankful for Rick and all that stuff. From what the Comic-Con trailer shows, because it can't be that they're thankful for Rick at the end of the conflict and after everything's smoothed out. Just my feeling alone. Mm-hmm. What I think is going to happen is things are going to descend. I'm thinking more like Lord of the Flies kind of thing, where yeah, exactly. Their divisions, things are going to break down. They're going to break down quickly, and people are going to start choosing sides. And I don't think it's going to be that way. And not only that, it's going to descend to a point where we're not sure what happens, but we know that there's going to be division lines, at least 2 division lines or something, maybe between communities, but maybe between factions within communities. And then they're going to time jump to a point at which it's the aftermath of that, and then they introduce the Whisperers to kind of bring people together, maybe in the aftermath of like this civil war kind of thing that's going on 3 fronts, or maybe more, who knows. So and then the conflict with the Whisperers against, you know, between like the healing of the Commonwealth maybe at the beginning, and then like, oh, you guys fixed your things, you know, after the time jump, and then the Whisperers come in to kind of further unite them. That's my thought. But the second thing that I'm thinking is that if they are going to be more united near the end of it, or if they are going to have division, and there is going to be another time jump, having the end of Fear the Walking Dead season 4 and then having that mid-season break could be like a possibility for us to time jump back, you know, after they do the second time jump, and have Alicia catch up to the group for season 5 or something, or the road to the back half of season 9 of Fear the Walking Dead. So there's going to be a point at which maybe they meet up or something. I don't know. Gosh. So it's an interesting opportunity to get them to kind of, because if they are going to be doing time jumps, what's going to happen to Fear? Is Fear going to do a time jump? Is it going to be stuck in its own world? Are there going to be things that they drop in Fear during the break that will end up showing up in The Walking Dead, because then it's the future? And if the Whisperers do show up 5 years in the future, Fear the Walking Dead may have something to do with that. Right? So
I mean, it could.
We could be planting seeds in Fear that show up in the time jump in the second half of their season 9.
It's like mind-boggling. It's like on an Inception level, you know?
Right. Because there's no doubt in our minds, I mean, you and me, I think we're on the same page, that they are going to have to reconcile at some point.
For sure.
Right? Or like cross over in a even more significant way than a character jumping ship.
Right. No, right. More than just that.
A prisoner swap.
Essentially.
I mean, yeah, I guess so. I mean, according to Andrew Lincoln, yeah, it's like I was in prison. No, I'm kidding. I was in a 10-year sentence away from my kids. What kind of life is this? I'm kidding. But he is coming back, so there you go.
There you go.
That's official. He's coming back. The one thing that people aren't talking about is the fact that he's coming back.
Who, Rick?
I think so. You know, it's one thing to go away, but it's another thing to come back.
I think a lot of people do feel like he's coming back. I've spoken to different people, and they do feel it's like, yes, he's going to come back. I think he's going to come back.
Maybe now, but the feeling that I got from all this was that people were more pissed off that he was going, and like it being the show's fault or something like that, than really talking about the positive. Because I think they haven't made it through the looking glass. Like they're still focused on the fact that he's leaving, and like, I don't want to watch the show anymore, or various dumb reactions.
Right.
But those of us who are through the looking glass, even us, like, we're not thinking of, first of all, if he's coming back, and then how.
Right.
I'm there, but I haven't seen many like-minded ideas that come on that front.
No, I don't think a lot of people are thinking about that, but because I think a lot of people are just kind of like in the shock phase that this is going to happen, and just sort of like not sure of like how this is going to happen. They're just so fixated on how is this going to happen? How is this going to go down more than anything anything else.
Right. And we're already kind of talking about how he's coming back.
Right. We're already past that.
Yeah, we're kind of past that. Like, I think no matter what, he's coming back. I think it's going to be just a nice, huge break for him to kind of either recenter, or maybe even just do nothing for a little while. That would be fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just don't see a world in which The Walking Dead can continue without him coming back, for sure.
Yeah. I think it's very rare that you have a show where you have your main character killed off and you just continue. I just think that that's too hard to do. So I don't think that you can write him out completely.
Oh, like Heath?
Well, and he's coming back too.
Yeah, but the signs of that, he's taking a little too long of a break, don't you think?
Yeah, he's taking his time. Heath is a whisperer.
Oh no!
I don't know.
You think?
I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Because
the second you say somebody is a whisperer, the first word I'm going to think of is rape. So I mean,
I know
that's the first word you have to think of.
Honestly, it is the first thing I think of when I think of the Whisperers, because it's so different from any other group.
Right. Like it's a bizarre sex
technique.
Cult. Yeah.
It's just, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for Heath to have been captured by the Whisperers.
That's true. Oh.
When we last saw him, we saw him on a bike, or definitely like he was on some sort of vehicle that had taken off with him, and all that was left was that card with PPP, I think it was.
Well, we didn't see him being taken off in a vehicle, did we?
I think it was just
the card.
I don't remember. I gotta take a look at that again.
The only time we thought that it might have been him was when Tara.
Mm-hmm.
Tara saw the back of what he thought was Heath's head, and it was really a walker,
right.
And it wasn't him at all. But then other than that, she turns around and sees it was like a note on a windshield, right?
Yeah, I think it was, I don't know if it was on the floor. I don't remember. By the way, how has Tara made it as far as she has? Right?
How lucky is it? Oh, you know what? Honestly, yes, that's a good question to kind of ask, but really, there's no good answer. But then it makes me think about Dwight.
Ah, that's right. We can't forget about Dwight. They didn't really show him in the trailer at all.
Nope. It makes me think, do you think that he's going to have a role at any point in the season?
That's such a good question.
Because you mentioned that Sherry has a role.
She does. She does have a role, and I completely forgot about that.
You're welcome.
Thanks. Sherry does play a role, and she's out there. When we left off, he goes to their house and sees that she left a note and drank the beer and the pretzels or whatever. So he's comforted to know that she's still alive, and she still goes back there. So I think that she's still alive. I think that she'll still be around. To what capacity? I don't know. I don't remember how involved she is during the whole Whisper period, or if she is more of a presence after or before. She doesn't play like a huge role, but she definitely steps up and becomes a more prominent player and everything.
Right.
But she's going to come back. This is my thing. Anybody who goes out in the woods and it's like, oh, we don't know, they disappeared, they're still out there.
Yeah, they're just like waiting in the wings.
Yep, exactly.
Well, in terms of production of the show.
But yeah, I think that covers everything that I had marked down for what's to come.
I'm surprised at how much we covered with the way we were kind of darting back and forth between points. As far as the trailer goes for SDCC, I don't have too many crazy notes.
Yeah.
Don't you get tired of acting like you're in charge? Don't you? Dictatorship 2.0?
Yeah, pretty.
Although it doesn't seem like it's going to be that way, but
no.
Everybody practically confronts Rick about leadership.
Yes.
By the way, from Maggie, from Daryl, and I think even Michonne talks about it.
I think Michonne has a point where she talks to him like,
weren't you going to give this shit up?
I don't think these groups are able to get along. Too much has kind of gone down.
Oh yeah, she says exactly this. She says, just as they show the sign on the Savior's wall, Savior, save us, we are still Negan. She says to Rick, if they can even move on.
Right.
That's very interesting. Which is why I kind of say, oh, this is going to be like the politics season. You know, how people get tribal and communication breaks down and all that. Because it seems like, again, they're getting along. And then, that's why I'm predicting Lord of the Flies.
Yeah.
As things just start breaking down. Maybe not in the same way as Lord of the Flies, but tribes start to form and people have to pick sides and all that stuff. So the only thing I had was like, okay, we'll see more of Enid. It feels like we're going to.
Yeah.
It is something that we said that there is a possibility that Enid plays the role of Carl, and maybe it's a male on the other side or something like that. Or so those things. Yeah, but as far as that goes, I'm done with that. And then there's the Talking Dead preview show, which we mentioned about Yvette Nicole Brown, but things like Jesus Will Fight Again, the Hilltop having a lot of power because of their ability to produce.
Right.
It seems like they have a leg up on production because of expert farmers. And Maggie's kind of an interesting one because whereas we thought she would be the alpha, it seems to me that she is juggling between wanting a better world with her child while still dealing with the feelings of Negan having survived and not getting leadership and all that stuff.
Right.
So I was kind of actually, in like my good-hearted way, I was kind of hoping that having a child would get her to see some sense. And I'm glad they're following that in a way, because it wouldn't make much sense to, look, you're a mom, right?
Indeed.
And do you think that part of the way you saw the world changed when you had kids in terms of the way you act in the world?
100%. Your level of priorities and your viewpoint and how you process things are just different. Things that were a big deal before are not so much now. Even in terms of stamina and rest, obviously it's not there when you're a mom, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think that I used to get far more, I want to say, emotional or riled up over certain things than I do now. Whereas now, things that potentially would have been like a bigger deal to me now are just kind of shrugged off. It's like, whatever.
That's
like,
the world.
It's not, yeah, it's not the end of the world, and it's not really worth my time, because the other thing is too, is like my time is very limited, and
or your attention even.
My attention is very limited,
like
so I'm not going to, and I'm not going to waste it on something that really doesn't deem it. So,
or if it does, it just burns you out. It's like, I've got other things to do. Like,
I've got way more important things to do that potentially could burn me out. So I need to save my energy and devote it to those things and not waste my time and energy and effort on something that's just
like pursuing outrage, you know, like why get involved in so many of these different things?
Right, exactly. I focus on our little brood, our family life and that sort of thing. But when it comes to like petty disagreements that I sometimes even notice, I'm like, you know, why even bother? Like, why do you even care? I don't. I'm the first one to say I don't care.
Yeah.
You know?
And you know what?
Or when things get really riled up and emotional at work, I'm like, I don't care. At the end of the day, it's you're not curing cancer. You're not saving a life. No, it's true. I mean, if I'm saving a life, if a life hangs in the balance, it's a very different story, of course. But if that's not the case, make like Frozen and let it go. Just let it go.
And then take that, Maggie.
Yeah.
And this is what we were talking about. So we were trying to touch on that.
Are you a fan of Maggie?
See, that's the thing. And that's kind of the point that I was going to make. Because the problem that I was having with her being alpha was part of this. How does anybody justify making her alpha when she does end up having a kid? And we know that she's going to have this kid.
Right.
And I think I tried to kind of touch on that in that episode. And then we just kind of got wrapped up in the excitement of season 9. But I'm glad this is happening the way it is. And me discussing it with you on your level, on your personal level, because it's much more convincing to me that something inside her changes to where her priority of trying to either like overthrow Rick or being outraged over Negan surviving, something in her has to deprioritize this intent. And not something, the thing, the kid.
Right.
So that now I can be a better fan of Maggie. And in fact, the whole idea of the power struggle, not the power struggle per se, but like more of like, okay, look, you promised me leadership positions, but what it seems to me, and this is another point that I make in my notes, is that what it seems to me is that Rick kind of takes more of a federalist approach to leading, so like single figurehead almost, and then, you know, breaking it down in tiers, kind of like Negan, right? Top heavy. Whereas, and trying to centralize powers, which is kind of more authoritarian, right? And I don't think he means it to be authoritarian, and maybe the scenes in the cell between he and Negan, maybe they're both rubbing off on each other. Maybe Rick telling him all the nice things and all the cooperation that they're having is one way, but then Negan whispering in Rick's ear, basically saying, I'll believe it when I see it, the way I ran things ran more efficiently, and blah, blah, blah. And I think maybe Rick takes some of that to heart, saying, we got to show them. And even Michonne trying to say there's got to be punishment and blah, blah, blah. I think she said that. I'm not sure. But so in my notes, I said also that I think there's going to be a struggle between a lean towards more federalism and a lean towards more confederalism. Not in the extremes, but there's going to be like, okay, states' rights, which is like the individual communities make their own rules, and then maybe there'll be some rules between communities that they can all abide by. Whereas with Rick, it'll be like it's more top down. There'll be rules that there are many rules that all communities abide by, and then whatever tiny bits of changes that each community wants. And to me, that's fascinating. That's fine. You know, I like these kinds of ideas, how they kind of pull back and forth. It kind of takes the show to the next level, and not just kind of like Negan, the way Negan does things versus the way Rick's crew does things. You know, that sort of thing.
Right.
Going back to Maggie, it makes Maggie likable again in terms of being more excited to see how that works out, because then I can be interested, because then I can see the struggle that she's going to have between Negan surviving and then dealing with that, but then also dealing with leading a successful community that should probably be a little bit more autonomous, right? They have earned it. The key to the future, that was all her, and her deciding to trust. She deserves the credit for that. Rick wouldn't have done that. Rick would have murdered Georgie. And Flitter, Sticky, and Doofus.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and Pickles McGee. Again, so I'm interested. I'm interested in Maggie again. I was not looking forward to seeing her in the next season, given the last interactions, which have to stick out in everybody's head.
Oh, yeah,
you
absolutely.
Know, that stuff can't go away.
No, I sincerely doubt that.
Yeah, so there you go. We could tackle Fear the Walking Dead fairly quickly, though.
All I was thinking was Sharknado. Watching that. It was all Sharknado to me. I was like, wow, look at those walkers fly. Then I started thinking, like, oh, wonder what happens. Like, what if it like hit you accidentally? You know, it's like flying through the air and then it just kind of hits you. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, and how much do these things weigh? There is like a physics issue. Like how much do these things really weigh, right? Because so much of their mass is lost during movement or during decomposition. So I
feel like they could have delved into some serious stuff in that trailer, and I was still, in my mind, fixating on flying walkers.
Oh, see, I like the voiceover. I liked a couple things. So let's dial it back a little on the actual exposition and figuring things out. The one thing that this trailer does really well is include all these funny goddamn songs.
Yes.
Okay.
That definitely was very unnerving. Not in a bad way, but I'm just saying, like, I always find it interesting when you have these sort of like situations that scream one scenario and you have these songs that very much juxtaposition.
Like, it's all so quiet.
I love that song, but the Bjork.
The Bjork version?
Yes. Yeah.
I like the original, though. They kind of like flesh it out a little bit. It's the original. Actually, this one's not the original. By the way, this is kind of like an in-between that and Bjork. So,
okay.
So there's that. And then there's Etta James's version of Stormy Weather.
Yes.
So that's, how hilarious is that? Between that and Take Me to the River, Al Green.
Yes.
Which, by the way, if you go to what's it called? A tune site, whatever, to find out what songs play in the shows, they list the Billy Bass version. It is not the Billy Bass version. They replaced the Billy Bass version with the Al Green version. So look it up.
Fascinating.
Yeah, they're all wrong. They're all totally wrong. So just so you know, it also kind of brings me to a little bit of the season 9 trailer for The Walking Dead, because the music they use in that intro, I mean, I am definitely going to be using in the background. I mean, not to blow my spot, but that is definitely going into this show. Yeah. So you've already heard it by the time we release it later. So there you go.
There you have it.
And I've got a little bit of surprise. So for you, because by the time we edit this show, it will have played at the beginning of the top of the show, but there's this guy called Gentle Bruce. It's one word. And he makes this synth remake of the Walking Dead theme.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so that will have already played at the beginning if we are doing the editing later on and editing the show for posterity later on. So you're going to listen to that, you'll be like, damn, this is pretty cool.
Wow.
And not only that, I got permission from him.
Really?
Yeah, I reached out to him and he said, yeah, totally, you could use it. And like, you'll hear it in the finished version of this episode. So that's going to be kind of cool.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So I'm working on it. I'm working on the music. By the time you hear this in like iTunes or Google Play Music or whatever, SoundCloud, you will have already heard it. But there you go.
Hustling all the time.
Yeah. But there are some key things in the trailer that are worth paying attention to. So behind the scenes, Andrew Chambliss is saying the core of this season is really going to be, you would think that, after that campfire scene, they're eating noodles and stuff like that the group just moves on. But they're going to be making it clear that the group has a hard time moving forward, which I think is very interesting. It definitely does break away from what we would normally see in a show where you feel like things have resolved or they've made it through and now they can relax. They don't. There's basically guilt, there's blame, and then people are just kind of purposeless because, you figure out that like along the way, when they're finally through and things are over, we lost people.
Right.
And now we have to deal with that. Like with Luciana losing Nick, she hasn't had time to grieve for Nick. Of course she's upset in the moment, but she can't. They're on this path of vengeance, and that path of vengeance ended suddenly. So it's kind of like they're not letting it go, a la Frozen. They're not going to let it go in their own different ways. And I think also, by the way, the bog thing has not been brought up for Maggie Grace, Althea. Remember those tapes? Those are definitely going to be coming up.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
They haven't come up yet.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's that whole thing that we know of. And then with Mo Collins coming on the show, and it looks like a couple of other characters coming on. One of whom seems to be one of the guys that are coming on seems to be in trouble really early on. The dude with the beard, who we friended on Instagram, but whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Mo Collins having that comic relief slightly. We did see some of that in the trailer, so I'm kind of looking forward to that, because I think the show does need more lighthearted moments still. The show has made a really good effort of, like, you know, Jenna Elfman being in comedy and her not having any comedic bits practically, but then John Dory being able to do a couple of things.
I know.
Garrett Dillahunt. So that's really great. But then Mo Collins coming on the show, and Mo Collins and Jenna Elfman are pretty good friends, and it's going to be kind of interesting seeing Jenna Elfman being like this deadpan person, and then Mo Collins kind of being like, you know, like having that comedic character to play off of that. I mean, so many of the guys on this show have comedic backgrounds too, so it's kind of interesting. So part of all of that is the search for what a home might resemble too.
True.
So with all their personal dramas, they're all kind of figuring out, how do we live? Do we even want to live with each other? So I think that's pretty interesting. I think when the first half of Fear the Walking Dead came to a close, didn't it feel like a part of you was kind of like, where do they go from here? Right? Where can this go?
Yeah.
Like there's no threads left to follow. And so we're kind of walking into this thing with just a trailer.
Yeah.
Doesn't it make you kind of a little uncomfortable?
Yeah, I do.
I mean, and you not having the comic to back it up, that's got to be something too.
Right. It's like, I don't know where the hell this is going.
Right. Discomfort,
yeah.
Whereas even in The Walking Dead, you know, okay, let's say you didn't even read the comic. There are things left over. Heath, Dwight, the last scene with Maggie and Daryl, and the idea of a time jump, Shane Walsh coming on board. So your mind can go places. But when you really don't have anything to go on with Fear the Walking Dead, really nothing. Except for the bog tapes for Althea, nothing. There's nothing.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's discomforting, but in another way, let's just do this. You and me agree on one thing. They gave us a pretty damn good first half, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's remember that going into the second half, because I know when you look at the trailer, it's kind of ridiculous in a way. Walkers in the wind.
Walkers in the wind. Yes.
Singing in the
That's what they
sort of
thing. Singing.
That's what they should have done. Actually, maybe they'll put that in this episode.
There you go.
I'll just keep finding songs about rain and wind.
Here Comes the Rain Again by the Eurythmics.
Oh, instrumental Philharmonic version.
There you go.
Yeah, sure.
I'm only happy when it rains.
Synth pop version.
We can keep on going.
Oh, Weird Al. Let's find a Weird Al version of something involving rain.
Oh my God. Forgot about Weird Al. Another one.
Rides the bus.
Another one rides the bus. Yeah. That was jarring.
Or maybe Dare to Be Stupid. Right, I don't know.
No, I mean, in my mind, I was like, this is just Kirkman fucking with everyone because he's a Weird Al fan. Secretly.
Oh, yeah. Hey, what if that does show up in season 9 though? Somehow.
I know.
They'll play like a fake out of what the future sort of is, but is not at all. But they'll still have the song.
Of all things in the apocalypse, Weird Al survives.
Yeah, with the Weird Al song survives and makes it through. Carl doesn't.
Oh,
shoot.
Sad.
No Al Festival.
No.
Not happening.
Not happening. But Weird Al, that's timeless.
Oh.
Timeless.
So here's the other thing. Along with a hurricane comes the flood, right? So you have this hurricane, there's damage, blah. People get scattered. People are apart, it seems like, right? But then afterwards, you have all this water everywhere. So now you have two hazards.
Yes.
You have walkers that are going to be in the water, right?
And airborne. I'm sorry, I keep going back to that.
Well, I mean, afterwards.
Right.
Well, maybe in trees, right? They'll just fall on you.
Trees just falling from the trees, yeah.
But then you have the gators, it seems like all these animals that will come in from the swamps, the bayous.
Well, that was the big concern in Texas when they had the floods.
Oh, God.
That was the bigger concern, was all the
wildlife
in the waters.
And I mean wild.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And it's a genuine concern when you don't have all the technology, no sonar, whatever.
Yeah.
So what did you think about the narration? Was that Mo Collins' voice? I wasn't quite sure, because then there was the other older-looking, hobo-looking person who was also there. No, because I don't know what to make of her, so I'm like, because she had said something to, I guess Morgan, or I forget who it was. Oh, you be careful. Yeah, it was Morgan. You be extra careful. Was the woman in the background that was narrating throughout the trail, was that Mo Collins? Was it this woman? If it's Mo Collins, that's a little more interesting, because is there a darker character that's egging them on, that's kind of nudging them in this darker direction towards their dark side, along with all this other stuff that they're trying to deal with? Again, the guilt and the maybe the hurt feelings from the other people, and and their purpose being kind of thrown to the wind. So then there's this other character that eggs them on, and part of me was kind of like, is this like the Whisperers? Maybe I don't know. I'm not thinking for sure, but I'm just like, I thought the Whisperers in the other show,
right?
John Dory being John Dory, ever steadfast, trying to rally the troops, and
as always,
he doesn't really crack at all. That's really all I got. I mean, we really managed to get through everything.
I think we really did. I think that's everything on my list. I'm just very excited to finally get back into Walker season, basically. Get into it.
Our podcast groove again.
Getting into it again.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a good way of, and kind of a radical way to kind of get back into things. Doing a live stream when we have never done a live stream before.
I know.
So how about this? With that, everybody, I think we could call it a night.
I think so.
So
looking forward to the new season.
I think they're going to come out with more teasers, I hope.
I think so. We'll get more little pieces.
Probably in the next month, probably like September, let's say, or late September, leading up. And then I guess the only thing left to say is I guess we'll talk to you guys next week about the mid-season premiere of Fear the Walking Dead.
Absolutely.
So until then, everybody, we'll catch you later, and have fun on Sunday night.
Yep.
Let's do this again sometime.
So exciting. See you next time.
Later, guys. Okay. You still there? Nope. All right. It's just us chickens. Oh, I'm still recording here. Obviously. Bye, guys.